Good evening and welcome to the 11th edition of the Old Git Gooners podcast. And I've been joined by three panelists, guests, who have all been on before, so they know the score. And I'm not going to introduce them at great length, but very briefly, I'm going to start with Mr. Simon Cardwell, who
Hello.
who normally on Thursday evenings is actually hosting events for his rock and roll book club in East London and Central London, Soho, and South London sometimes. I haven't got down to his
Yeah.
London events yet, but one day soon, I'm sure. But it's good that he's free this particular Thursday evening to join us. So Simon Cardwell, welcome along.
Hello,
Um,
Kevin.
Now, next up, we have, well, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He writes the 1980s sports blog for the Guardian and continues to write for the Gooner as well. And yes, so if we're doing any historical stuff, he is definitely going to be in the frame. Welcome along to Mr. Steve Pye.
Hi, Kev.
And finally, last but not least, another regular Gooner contributor for many years, and now occasionally spotted by me at away matches with your daughter, Charlie, who you have indoctrinated into the
Indeed.
way, as we all do as parents, and sometimes it doesn't work out. I've heard horror stories, but good on you, and good on me, because my boy as well is obviously a Gooner. So welcome along, Mr. Charlie Ashmore.
Thank you very much. And I promise I won't cause offence by encroaching on anybody else's territory this evening.
Did you do that last time?
No, but have you not followed the post Chelsea match ramifications? Dear old Rossini has been very upset because two of our coaches were in the Chelsea half in the warm-up.
Oh, I saw something about that. I thought he was having out players actually,
No,
but
apparently it's very disrespectful.
oh my goodness me. Well, he's
Yeah.
got to get over that, I'm afraid.
I
It's
think he'd probably have done a better job encouraging his players to encroach more effectively in our half during the match, but
very
there we
bad
are.
indeed. Well, let's actually talk about uh, Tuesday evening because the winning goal, of course, was a very sweet moment, and it was scored by a player who we haven't seen much of for 12 months, and it's going to be interesting to see what transpires now. So, the opening question on this evening's agenda is what do you think might change if a certain Kai Havertz remains fit for the remainder of the season? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Simon Cardwell.
The thing I noticed at the Leeds game was that I think they talked about it on, I think, Arseblog on the Monday, saying that they all thought he had a good game, which I thought too. But then when they looked at the stats, they were like, he didn't really do anything eye-catching that perhaps made you actually think that. But he just sort of linked the team up. I just thought he just knitted our team together nicely. And he does so many things that I think a lot of fans don't notice and don't pick up on. He's one of the smartest footballers that we've ever had, I think. So I think if he's fit, I mean, he's going to play in a lot of the big games for sure. And you've got that option of bringing him on to go up front as a pair. You've also got that option of him, the whole, if you remember, he was signed originally as a midfielder and it didn't really work. But in the Leeds game, he was playing on that sort of left midfield role. And I thought he looked pretty good. So obviously with Mikel Merino out, I think you're going to see quite a lot of him in quite a few roles, really.
Was he on the left or was he more on the right?
Well, he was sort of dropping back quite. He was dropping back deeper than he was previously because previously he was playing as a forward, I guess. So he was dropping quite deeply. I saw most of the game, but I missed some of it. But yeah, I just think he's going to play in a few different places. He'll be a great sub to bring on, and he'll also get you, as we saw, he'll get you important goals.
Certainly did that on Tuesday evening. Steve, um, yeah, I mean, what have you got to add to that? I mean, I mean, the perception is going to be that it can only improve things, but what do you think is going to change in terms of what Havertz actually brings to the team?
Um, Yeah, I'll echo quite a lot of what Simon said. Really, my main points were how well he links the play up, and he's also going to give us an option because Marino's out for the rest of the season by the sounds of it. So, but I kind of think back to the 23-24 season when we had that mad run at the end of the season. Only dropped, what was it, 5 points in the last 18 matches, and how
16 wins from 18.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he was pivotal in that run. I felt he started picking the team. So I'm kind of hoping history repeats itself, because I think we can afford to drop a few points this time, because I don't think City are quite as good as they haven't been in previous years. So so I don't really know the answer to your question. I'm basically echoing what Simon said. I think he links the play superbly, kind of a sort of the oiling machine, as it were, and then he can play a number of roles within the team, which is going to benefit us as we're bound to get some more injuries as the season goes on.
Charlie, do you think he's actually better playing as, let's say, the lone front man, or being a bit more involved deeper, as he has been very recently?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, just Havertz is one of those players who it's happened in the past, but for the entire length of the 12 months that he's been out injured, he's got better throughout that 12 months, because we've all been desperately missing him. And the more you miss someone, the better they are in your imagination. But I echo what's been said. I mean, he is so intelligent as a footballer, and for me, his real skill, and this will go some way to answering your question, Kev. His real skill is finding space. He just has this uncanny ability to find these little pockets of space, and in a way, I'm not sure it matters whether he's playing in that, sort of left attacking midfield, or sort of more forward midfield role, or whether he's playing up front, because he doesn't stick to either position. And I think that's part of the beauty of him, because, last week against Kairat, for the first 15 minutes, I thought he was playing right wing, because that's where he spent most of his time. But that was because that's where the space was. And he just has this ability to drift into these areas. I think the player who may benefit the most from him being back is Odegaard, because Havertz finds those little pockets of space that Odegaard wants to pass into, but Gyökeres doesn't find those. That's not the player he is. That's not a criticism of Gyökeres. They're just completely different players. So, assuming Odegaard's fit, I think he will benefit enormously from Havertz being available, and he does give us the option of playing in both positions. So he could play in that sort of midfield role with Jesus or Gyökeres up front. And he will link the play together very, very well, and he'll overlap with them, and sometimes he'll be ahead of them. But equally, he could play instead of them. And he'd probably be my first choice up front for the big games, certainly.
Yeah.
And I think his finishing has always been a bit maligned. I think he's a better finisher than people give him credit for. I heard an interesting comment from one of his German coaches when he was younger. He said, when people criticize his finishing, they don't appreciate something about his play, which is that because he finds these unusual pockets of space, he's generally shooting from unusual positions that other strikers don't find. So actually, a lot of the chances he creates for himself are quite difficult, which I just thought was an interesting comment. But sorry, Simon, you were going to...
No, I was just saying, the same thing, that, he gives you a completely different option to someone like, obviously Gyökeres. So I'm pretty excited he's fit. He's one of my favourite Arsenal players. I absolutely love him. He tends to miss the odd sitter, but he scores some difficult ones. But, you forget, think back to Aubameyang. He missed some absolutely unbelievable chances for us, and so does Haaland. So I don't think you can necessarily... I think he sometimes gets stick for missing presentable chances, but who doesn't?
Indeed. It's an interesting embarrassment of riches in some ways, because, my thought is that, Arteta's very likely to play Zubimendi and Rice.
Mm-hmm.
So he hasn't got room really for Odegaard, Havertz and Gyök as I call him, in the same starting 11. Um, I mean, Steve, do you think it's going to be rotation, or do you think someone is going to be edged out for the big games? And if so, who do you think that's going to be?
Yeah, I think for the big games, I would think Gyökeres would be edged out personally. I think we've all kind of agreed that Havertz really should be starting up front in the bigger games. And like you said, Odegaard will benefit from that. Gyökeres is a very useful option. Perhaps games like Sunderland at the weekend, maybe starting in games like that, get Havertz back up to fitness gradually. But yeah, if I was gonna, if I had to pick my starting 11, then yeah, Havertz would definitely start up top. But away at Man City, for example, we definitely start there. So
okay, I think if the club continued on all fronts, there will have to be rotation. So I mean, we anticipate there is a role for Gyökeres. I mean, he's going to continue to start some games. Would that be a fair conclusion?
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, he'll start games. I mean, he's coming in for an awful lot of stick this season because he's just not been battering goals in the way that he did in Portugal. But we're 6 points clear in the Premier League with after 24 games. We with unbeaten, 100% record in the Champions League. You don't achieve that by carrying a passenger. So even if he hasn't been contributing in the way that we all thought he was signed to contribute, he has been contributing. And I think there is absolutely a role for him. I mean, what's lovely is we've got 3 completely different options up front because you can't leave Jesus out of the conversation. And they each bring something completely different. And I suspect Arteta will have in mind what sort of games each player perhaps is best suited to. I think it's right that Gyökeres is probably better suited to the games like Sunderland, games like Leeds, potentially, where his strength is going to be a factor. That's not to say that Havertz isn't strong or that Jesus isn't strong, but he is a bit more of a battering ram type player. Havertz, as we've said, is just such a clever player at finding space and linking everything together. And Jesus is still got a huge amount to offer. I think. I mean, look at the goal he scored at the weekend. Absolute beauty. I mean, that little half drag back and just to create that little bit of space to get the shot away was superb.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Gyökeres might do as a sub because he's started most games the first half of the season. The others weren't fit, but I kind of like that option of bringing on something different off the bench. You've obviously got Kai brings you something, but I think also chucking Gyökeres on 70 minutes against the right opposition, I think could cause some chaos. So I'm actually looking forward. You've got players in the past, Giroud, Kanu, and others who were capable of being very effective as a sub in the last 20. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing the next time we need a goal and we chuck him on, what might happen. If you put him on with Kai or with Jesus, because we haven't really seen that as of yet, particularly.
Okay. I mean, the rotation options up front look quite healthy. But one thing which strikes me about the injury to Merino is that I could foresee him certainly relieving at different times Rice or Zubimendi in games. I mean, if it's Zubimendi, that Rice would drop back, Merino would play more forward. And obviously, if Zubimendi starts, Mourinho is playing in the Rice advanced position. So, I mean, on that level, how concerning is it that effectively we're unlikely to see a match fit Mourinho, certainly for a couple of months and possibly the rest of the season? Is this something which is going to make any difference, or are we in such a good position now that we don't actually require him? Charlie first.
I think it does make a difference because, again, Merino is he's such a clever footballer, and he brings options to the team. As you say, he can play in that midfield role. He can play up front, as he's shown remarkably effectively. He's a little bit like Havertz in that sense, in that he can cover both areas of the pitch. He knits things together very well. He finds space very well. I think Havertz is probably the more complete version. But losing Merino is a problem, and it's particularly a problem because he is one of Arteta's go-to options, whereas for reasons that I'm not sure about, but I assume it's something he's seen on the training ground, Norgard doesn't seem to be a player that Arteta fancies using very much. And when you're talking about backup options for Rice and Zubimendi, you're kind of left with Norgard. And if Arteta doesn't fancy him, then I suspect that means Rice and Zubimendi may end up playing more minutes than we'd like. So, yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see Norgard play more in the first half of the season. There were a couple of games, I thought Brentford at home in particular, I couldn't understand why Rice was being played in that game. And if there was a game that Norgard, could have been played in, you'd have thought against the team he knows as well as that would have been the perfect opportunity. So I don't know what the issue is with Norgard, but if Arteta doesn't trust him, then that's two options that really aren't available.
Yeah, he's going to have to play him. I think he's not going to have any choice. He's going to have to play him more than he has. I don't see any alternative really, unless you try to repurpose someone. I think Ben White played defensive mid for Leeds, didn't he, for a year? So unless you try something like that, I mean, you're just going to need someone to give you 10 and 20 minutes here and there to relieve. Because if Zubimendi or Rice get injured for a long period, then that's a problem, isn't it? So yeah, I think Norgard's going to have to play.
Steve, do you think? What have you made of Norgard when he's actually been on the pitch? Have you formed an impression which indicates there's any reason he can't be relied upon?
I've always thought he's fairly tidy as a player. Not spectacular, but you don't particularly need that sometimes in midfield. I'm very confused though. Like Charlie said, is there something happening in training that he's brought Norgard to the club and just not fancied him as a player? Because he should really have played a lot more than he has. And heaven forbid we do get an injury to Rice or Zubimendi, he might have to step up. Otherwise, yeah, like you said, we're going to go through the Ben White or even Lewis Skelly in midfield or options like that. So I hope to see a lot more of him. If he doesn't play against Wigan, he's in trouble, obviously. But so yeah, I think he needs to get some more minutes because playing Rice and Zubimendi for the rest of the season is going to we've been there before. We've burned players out, so we need to be careful, really. So.
Yeah, I suppose one option is that Havertz could cover that forward position, so there's an element of rotation possible there, and even against weaker teams, possibly as they might be able to do a job there if we're confident. But we shall see. But it'd be nice if we could get him back for, let's say, the last week in April. So don't rule it out. Let's hope for the best there. But we have been discussing forward matters. Let's have a little look ahead to the summer. Arsenal have been linked with the idea of getting Alvarez from Atletico Madrid because the perception is we need more up front in terms of, shall we call it, a more regular goal scorer. What are your thoughts on Alvarez? Do you think, Simon, that he would work at Arsenal? Do you think he'd be a good fit?
I always thought he was a very good player at City, but you can use stats to prove or disprove anything. And I saw something the other day and it said something like 1 goal in open play in 3 months or something like that. So, who knows? I haven't really been watching him closely, but I thought he played well against us a couple of months ago. We played them at home and I thought he was impressive. I mean, with Arteta that if he sees an upgrade, he will seize it. if you ask Ramsdale or White or whoever about that, they will know all about it. So I think with Victor Gyökeres, I think perhaps if we see an upgrade, we might take it, and you just you sell him at a cut price in a year or something like that. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if he got Alvarez. I've seen 80 million, which feels like not a ridiculous price. So yeah, I mean, I think he'd fit in nicely. What does everyone else think?
I would be surprised if he was brought in as a Gyökeres replacement. I think if we are looking at him, it's probably in anticipation of Jesus going.
It could be, yeah.
I don't think we'd going to put ourselves in a situation where we've got 4 options up front. I just think that would just create more problems than it solves, because you're going to have unhappy players. I think there's enough faith in Gyökeres that he will get another season to bed in. With the other options available, he won't have to play as often. I mean, he's had to play far more often than was envisaged on the back of a incomplete sort of pre-season. But so I think I wouldn't be surprised if we pursue it, but I think it will be as a replacement for Jesus rather than as a replacement for Gyökeres.
Okay, I mean, Steve, he's a World Cup winner. He's got Premier League experience. What's not to like?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Does anyone know his numbers in Spain? I don't know.
Dried up a little bit on the goals, and reputedly there is some kind of fallout or disagreement with Simeone or Simeone's style or something. I haven't read into it deeply, but he certainly
scored 29 last season. I've actually got his page up here. He scored 29 last season. He scored 11 this season, 7 in the league.
Numbers.
His figures are decent, but everyone's slating Gyökeres for having those same figures. So
yeah. I suppose he's playing in a slightly better league, hopefully. But I wouldn't be against us getting him. I still balk at some of these prices, but as you say, £80 million is probably a fairly decent price nowadays for a centre forward. And he's got Premier League experience. Wouldn't be against us bringing him in, and you've got to trust the scouts and the manager.
All right, that's a yes vote from Mr. Pye. I'm going to move on now to the idea of this beautiful meeting that Arteta held with the players after the defeat against Manchester United, which I have to say was a complete fluke, frankly. And I think people who got excited about that, it was partially off the back of 2 goalless draws. So we weren't racking up the points for a little bit. And on one level, I understand the frustration, but if we would take a helicopter view, there were good reasons for that defeat, which were quite unique in certain respects. But we had this idea that perhaps as a consequence of this meeting, Arsenal might play a bit differently. The next games were against Kairat, Almaty and Leeds. Now, the question is, are the team actually playing more aggressively, or was it the nature of the opposition that made it look like they were? And we are actually going to have to get used to the way that sometimes we do play with the handbrake on. We are very cautious. We are very concerned with not conceding as our route to winning a match. I mean, what's your take on it, Charlie? You mean, obviously you saw the games. Did you think and feel there had been a change in, shall we say, policy?
I'm not convinced. No. The one thing I do wonder is whether there's been a slight reworking of the Zubimendi Rice relationship. I just had the feeling, I think it was against Leeds, that Zubimendi was spending a bit more time further forward, And it reminded me a little bit of, and this is relevant also from the point of view of the meeting, it reminded me a little bit of Petit and Vieira in the second half of that the 97-98 season, where after that famous meeting, their job was primarily to protect the back four. So they kind of, I suppose they took a step back, but then what happened was that the one released the other. So one would stay back while the other joined the attack, and then vice versa. And I just wonder whether there's a little bit of that. But in terms of the general approach, I can't see it changing. I think we're wedded to this control philosophy. And look at Tuesday night. You saw, a situation where we played a team that on paper is very, very good. They were on a decent run of form. They've got some very, very good players, and they didn't get a sniff. I mean, they really didn't get a sniff of a chance. It was extraordinary. And I think that's what Arteta's aiming for. And in a way, a performance like Tuesday night was the epitome of that kind of control philosophy that he's got, or that he's developed into this control philosophy because of what's happened in previous seasons. And as I say, I think the view is that this is the way it's going to be. But I do sense there's a bit more willingness to get the ball forward a bit quicker, be a little bit more direct. There's been a couple of instances where those nice balls have been played for Gyökeres to run onto, which we just weren't seeing previously. So if there have been changes, I think it's possibly in the Zubimendi-Rice relationship, and possibly a willingness to get the ball forward quicker.
But Steve, you're watching the Arsenal matches. Are you thinking, am I being entertained, or are you relishing this stuff? And does it remind you of any of the past teams that the year?
I guess you'd lean towards the sort of George Graham sort of sight at the back, not quite 1-0 to the Arsenal, obviously, but I'd agree with. It's quite a small sample size to sort of say we've changed our tactics completely, because Leeds and now Matty are quite, kind opponents really to get back on the horse after the Manchester United game. So interesting though, Chelsea parked the bus. I know we didn't need to break them down on Tuesday, so it will be interesting I'm sure Sunderland are going to come and park the bus on Saturday, so that will be interesting to see how we can break them down. But I did notice Ellen Road, we did put a couple of crosses in for like centre forwards, and Zubimendi got the first one, and then Gyökeres got the second one. So perhaps we're going to start pinging crosses in, get it in the mixer. That's what I say. But
proper old school.
yeah. But I'd be happy if we carry on. If we win another 15, 16 games 1-0 from corners, I really couldn't care, to be honest. But
it feels like the way that he approaches it is he thinks, look, if you do this and play the game 10 times, you'll win it 7 or 8 times out of 10. So if you look at Sunderland away, they had 2 shots on target, both goals. Won't happen very often. Usually that's a win. 0-0 at Forest, usually that's a 1-0 win. If we played it again, we'd win it 4 times out of 5. Man United, 2 worldies and a freak back pass. That won't happen very often. So it feels like a lot of the games where we do drop points, he will look at it and say, well, Sunderland had 2 shots on target, so 9 times out of 10 you win that game, because it's not very often they'll put them both in. So I just think he plays the percentages sometimes like that, having developed. And also, if you've got a strong defence, you can lean on them. On Tuesday, you can lean on your defence and think they probably won't score here. We don't necessarily need a goal. And, there's been past Arsenal teams that have not had that ability.
Yeah.
And you knew that we would eventually concede or make some massive error. Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, Arsene was always a bigger fan of a 4-3 than a 1-0. I remember him, I think. But in fairness to Arsenal, I did read an interesting article which gave the stats of where teams kind of sit on the field in terms of their average defensive kind of distance from their goal. And generally, they are 5 meters closer to their goal against Arsenal than they are on average against other teams. So, in a way, I think we can look at that as a backhanded compliment. But it does explain why the free-flowing football is so difficult. And Charlie, I mean, we've basically found a solution, haven't we, really, to actually make that as ineffective as we can.
Well, look, yeah, I mean, here we are. We're 6 points clear at the top of the league. You know, it is working. Yes, we're reliant on set piece goals to a large extent, but so what? They're goals. You know, I don't care how they go in. As I think it was Simon said, or it might have been Steve. You know, if we won every game 1-0 with a set piece from here on into the end of the season, I should be laughing myself silly at the end, because not only will we have won the league, but we'll have wound everybody up while we're doing it. And what a lovely combination that is. And if we could do it even better, if we can be a set piece own goal every game, so much better, so much the better. But I think that the main thing is we are just horrible to play against. And every team says this, every manager says this, because we've got an answer. Defensively, we've got an answer to every problem that teams throw at us. And it does take, you know, look at the games we've lost this season. We lost at Liverpool. I mean, that was just a, 1 in 100 goal, that was. We lost to United because of a stupid mistake and 2 worldies, as you said earlier. And we lost to Villa essentially because Eze switched off at the back post and gave Cash and, a free hit. And that kind of got them into the game. And all right, there was a bit of, a good finish in amongst the carnage at the end. But we're not losing to routine goals where people are having to do something special to beat us. And I think teams are coming onto the pitch not knowing what to do. How it's almost, how are we going to even create a proper chance? Not just how are we going to score a goal, but how are we going to create a proper chance? So we have found a solution. It's working, and I'm not convinced that the time to change it is when you're 14 games to go and you're 6 points clear.
Simon, have we reached that stage where, although Arsenal haven't won anything, in fairness, we're in the tunnel with the opposition and they're looking at us like teams used to look at the Invincibles and thinking, my God, I don't fancy it this afternoon?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I don't know if you watch any American sports, but what they often do is when they're playing away to a big team, they'll just rest their best players and they'll just say, we're probably not going to win this. And you kind of see that a little bit creeping into the Premier League, where you see certain mid-level teams thinking, let's rest a few people, maybe away to Arsenal or maybe away to City. And I could see that happening a bit more because there's so many games. So teams that are in the Conference League and things like that. But yeah, I mean, the intimidating factor of our team, I think there's got to be something in that. If you look at Saliba, Gabriel, etc., I think there's definitely Declan Rice. Obviously, I'd be I think I'd be looking at it thinking, I saw a stat the other day that we've only conceded over 1 expected goal in a handful of games. Every single other game has been underneath 1. I think from how many games have we played? About 30. Yeah. I think it's less than 10 that have been over 0.7, it was saying. So that tells you that we generally give very, very little away. Chelsea could have played for 10 hours on Wednesday and they would never have ever even threatened to score. So, yeah, it's a good position to be in. As I've said, if you've got a strong defence, it puts you in very good stead, I think.
Right, I'm going to drop a hand grenade into this conversation and I'm throwing it to you, Mr. Pye.
Oh, thank you.
I'm taking a step back.
Yes, be careful of your screens out there if anyone's watching this on YouTube. I'm thinking Chelsea, 2004 to 2006. Would you say that there are any similarities?
Well, defensively is the obvious one.
Yeah.
And I think that team, the Chelsea team, their first trophy in under Mourinho was the League Cup. So you never know, that might be an omen. But that Chelsea team, as Simon said with the Arsenal team, you stand in the tunnel next to them and you think, oh dear, and you could try and scrap with the Chelsea team back then and possibly the Arsenal team now, and they'd outmuscle you. You try and play football against them, and they'd have players like Arjen Robben and Duff to sort of tear you apart, and they world-class goalkeeper in Czech back in the day. So there are quite a lot of similarities. And was that the team that set the record in the Premier League era? Anyway,
goals conceded. Yeah,
goals conceded.
15. Yeah,
because at one point earlier on in the season, I was wondering whether we could break that. But so they are definitely quite a pragmatic manager. So yeah, a lot of similarities. Apart from we're a really nice team, obviously. So
yeah, we're nice lads, aren't we?
We're nice, yeah.
Yes. However, let's consider the fact that we are being effectively forced to, use set pieces as a way of breaking through. Let's talk about the tactical development we've seen in football, because there has been a bit of a sea change with the last kind of year. We were all going down the Pep road, and we're still on the Pep road in terms of playing it out from the back. But when it comes to scoring goals, we're actually, it's the ghost of Charles Hughes. And for younger readers, this was a guy who did a report for the FA, which concluded the best way to score a goal was to get it into the box, however you did. So it was long ball that he was kind of associated with, playing the percentages. Now, when we are taking corners, we are playing the percentages. I don't think anyone would argue with that. We are creating chaos, knowing that if you create it enough times, you've got a bloody good chance of something going in, simply because of the number of bodies that are in that box. But okay, let's say, is this the shape of things to come? Are we going to have to get used to this, or is it a little phase? And at some point, football, as we used to know it, Jim, will return. Simon Cardwell, over to you.
It's funny, isn't it? Because that game at Leeds, our set piece deliveries were so good. Leeds just could not live with that delivery. The way that they curl it into the near post, they just could not live with it at all. And I think the whole long throw and set piece thing, in a few years it will change. Because if you watch football from 10 to 15 years ago, when City won the league with some quite strange players in their squad when you look back. And yeah, it will change for sure, because it changes every 10 to 20 years. And I'd like to think it might be a little bit more attacking, but I think it feels like the sort of tactics has gone so far that it's gone so far that now everyone's just playing ultra defensively, because it's reached this level where, if you watch 10 or 20 years ago, teams did not have anywhere near the tactical level that they do now. If you watch the Invincible team, the ball knocks back and forward between the halves a lot, and the possession gets given away. And I saw an article by a young journalist who wasn't around then, was basically saying, yeah, this football is not actually very good because look, they give the ball away all the time, because he's been watching the last few years of Pep Guardiola. But in 10 years' time, someone will look back and say, do you remember when everyone did long throws for a couple of years? So yeah, it will certainly change, but I don't know where. And I feel like at the moment, Arteta spotted first that set pieces were going to become significant in football. He was a year ahead of everyone else, at least. And that's why we're so good at it. And, other teams will catch up. They'll copy you. But yeah, I don't know where it'll go next. What do you think?
Well, Charlie, I'm going to ask you if you think the physical nature of the game, which is related completely to the incredible fitness regimes that modern footballers go through in terms of stamina and strength and healthy lifestyle, has created this monster effectively, whereby it is almost like a trial of strength at times of who's going to win a football match.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? If you look back, I mean, football tactics evolve all the time, and they generally follow the successful teams. So, a team gets successful playing in a particular way. Other managers look at it and they think, well, that's the way to go. So they kind of follow, and then you get the sort of the fight back as other teams start developing a new strategy to counter that. I think the Premier League's interesting because I think, yes, players are much fitter. Players appear kind of much stronger than they used to be, but I think also players are much better than they were. I think all the way through the Premier League, you've got to remember the Premier League. The 20 Premier League clubs are amongst I think if they're not all in the top 30 richest clubs in Europe, they're nearly all in the top 30 richest clubs, which means that the Premier League is the place the best players want to play, because leaving aside, the cachet of a Real Madrid or a Barcelona, but generally, because that's where the money is. And actually, that's where the worldwide attention is. So we are attracting across the whole of the Premier League better players. You combine better players with a more tactical approach, particularly to defending, and it is going to be harder to break teams down. And if you can't break teams down by going through them, then your next resort is, as you say, to kind of get the ball in there, whether it's from a corner, a free kick, or a throw in, put lots of bodies in there and use the chaos to kind of almost circumvent the tactics. So I think it's a combination of things that have led to this approach. And in terms of Arsenal's particular development over the last couple of years, it wasn't that long ago we were sweeping teams, before us, scoring 4s and 5s, on a regular basis. But the problem was we collapsed at the end. We didn't collapse, that's harsh, but we weren't able to quite carry that through. And we were conceding goals we shouldn't have been conceding, which cost us, which has then meant Arteta's kind of developed from that into this control philosophy. Well, if I stop teams scoring, I mean, so, it's not new. Teams have done it before. If I stop teams scoring and I've got good enough attacking players, chances are I'll win the game. And that's where we are.
Okay. Steve, it's fair to say there's a lot of grappling, a lot of pseudo wrestling going on at corners specifically. It's interesting it doesn't happen so much at free kicks, but it's presumably something to do with us trying to influence the goalkeeper or something. Have you noticed, is it any different in Champions League with European referees? Are we having all these histrionics, or is it something which is a little bit exclusive because Premier League referees are a little more, shall we say, lenient with the physical stuff? Have you noticed?
Was there a game against Porto? Was it last year or 2 years ago? I can't remember. And we were getting a lot of free kicks given against us from corners, I seem to remember. And I remember saying that this ref's so much more fussy than an English ref. So there could be an element in that. Just trying to think of any games this year where I don't think we've been penalised too much in Europe, as far as I can remember. But
and maybe
I don't know if anyone else can remember. But
quite so much because they just don't do it at home, Charlie.
I think in Europe also there's a difference in that we're not as reliant on set pieces because teams don't play the same way against us in Europe. Teams have a go. They try and play their football, and that so we end up creating more chances through open play. So we're not as reliant in Europe on the set.
Do you think that might? yeah, do you think that might change in the knockout phase when it obviously becomes a bit tighter and certain games where teams might, try the Premier League approach effectively? But
Depends who we're playing, I think.
yeah.
I mean, it depends who we're playing. My biggest fear is we're going to end up playing English teams.
We are, yeah.
And that'll be, that will be not a disaster for us, but I just think it'll be much harder for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe the Inter Milan game was one where I thought they'd be shithouses, but we kind of swept them aside fairly easily because I was expecting them to be a lot more sort of Diego Simeone-esque perhaps than actually transpired in the end. But in a knockout game, do you remember that Porto game a year or two ago? It was just horrendous.
Yeah,
two whole games plus half an hour of just nonsense. Yeah, it was absolutely rubbish. So, yeah.
I think the interesting thing to remember also with the Champions League is that we're going to be at home in the second leg all the way through. And that does sometimes kind of change the dynamics of how the tie's played.
Yeah, like the opposition will be going for it. They can't rely on getting a draw and coming to London and beating Arsenal at home. So
Exactly.
that's they're going to play into Arsenal's hands. I mean, it has been said that not now, I suppose, but earlier in the season, Arsenal might find it easier to actually win a Champions League than the Premier League, simply because of the nature of the matches. But we shall see. But let's just look ahead and see who we fancy in our round of 16 game. So there's 4 teams we could face. It's Atalanta, Borussia Dortmund, Bayer Leverkusen, or our old friends Olympiacos. Anything to worry about there, gents, or do you think one of those teams might be problematic? Steve, over to you first.
I know I'd like to be sort of overconfident, but those 4 teams don't sort of strike me as fear. Dortmund lost to Tottenham, so there you go. Leverkusen obviously have lost players, lost their manager, not quite as good as they were. Atalanta, not massively worried about. They're just going to come back to bite me, obviously, when we lose to Atalanta. But no, and then there'll be Olympiacos. It's always Olympiacos. So, that's who we draw. But no, none of those strike me as fear. Like we all just said, the English clubs worry me a lot over 2 legs. Don't really fancy playing, say, Man City in the League Cup final, then 2 games in the Champions League, and then the league match. Yeah, that worries me a lot. But those 4 teams that we've mentioned, I think we really should be favourites to go through there. So.
Simon, if there was one you would say, I don't want to meet them out of the 4, which would it be?
Dortmund, because I've been there before, so I've been to watch us play there. I've not seen us play at the other 3, but I've also looked at the expected ticket allocations, which are all quite stingy, so I'm not sure if it will pan out. But I mean, from those 4, I mean, I wouldn't really fear any of them, to be honest. I mean, I sometimes on YouTube watch the German highlights of the Bundesliga. It's like a half an hour goal package, and those teams are not interested in defending. I watched the Dortmund game last week. They were 2-0 up to St. Pauli, should be done and dusted, ended up 2-2. Then they got a penalty and won 3-2. It was complete chaos. And I watched them and thought that probably wouldn't happen in England. So, yeah, I mean, they're all tricky places, but home second leg, I think we'd all be backing ourselves to win any of those ties, hopefully.
Charlie, you're optimistic for a quarterfinal spot?
I think so. I mean, you can't be certain, obviously, but over 2 legs with the second leg at home, and with just our cussedness at the back and defensively, I struggle to see those teams beating. I'm not saying they won't cause us any problems, but I struggle to see them beating us over 2 legs with the second leg at home.
Right. Well, we're on the theme of Europe, and I'm going to take you back to the first half of the Cara Almaty game. We're 1-0 up. And then we have a moment where Calafiori decides to do a shirt pull in the penalty area. Got away with it really because of the opposition. The reality is we didn't even need to win the match. But my thought is to ask about the mentality of a defender playing under the microscope of VAR. Charlie, what was he thinking?
I'm not sure he was thinking. I think it was just an instinct, wasn't it? Look, it was stupid. It's the sort of thing that must irritate the hell out of a manager. You just can't legislate for your players doing daft things like that. As you say, it was. It didn't cost us. It was never going to cost us on that occasion. But I suspect, if I know anything about the way Arteta manages, I suspect Calafiori was told in no uncertain terms he needs to engage his brain before doing stuff like that.
Steve, does Calafiori worry you at all in that respect?
I don't think so. I'll try to be kind and say that was that his first game back. A bit rusty in this maybe, but he was a bit silly doing that because you can't get away with anything nowadays. But I think back to Saliba giving a goal away in Madrid last season. I know that ultimately didn't matter, but players will make mistakes. But it's just whether in the bigger sort of games towards the end of the knockout stages, whether they be costly or not. But obviously, tugging someone's shirt in the Almaty match didn't matter in the end ultimately. But
so he got it out of his system.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, get your mistakes out of the way early doors. Yeah.
Was that the most meaningless fixture that Arsenal Football Club has ever played? Because we were guaranteed first, they were guaranteed last of a 32-team league. I was trying to think of more of a dead rubber that we've ever played, and I was struggling to come up with one. So yeah, but no,
we must have played one in the Champions League group stages before. I can't think of it offhand, but we must have done.
There's probably a couple if you look it up. But Calafiori definitely used to be a striker when he was a kid and a teenager, because if there's ever a player who likes to go forward, it is him. Any excuse, he is upfield. So yeah, I definitely have a slight sort of nervousness occasionally because he's obviously someone who likes to go forward, but he's been pretty good, really, hasn't he? I think for the most part. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for the Kairat handball because he probably wasn't penalty rather. He probably wasn't that motivated for the meaningless fixture, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly doesn't strike me as a risk in the way that perhaps someone like David Luiz was for that brief period when we had him, and you kind of thought there was a penalty in him most games if if he wasn't careful. I just don't. I mean, I think. If you think to the get back through the games Calafiori has played, it's been pretty rare that he's let us down in that way.
Yeah, Luiz. I mean, I kind of forget Luiz ever played for us. We were looking after the game the other night in the pub. We were looking at the team from the 2020 Cup final, and there was some defenders in that team that were potential liabilities. So yeah, him amongst them, but. I don't know if you remember the semi against City, the final against Chelsea. I believe that Luiz was pretty monumental in both those games. So he played a big part.
Rob Holding. As was Rob Holding. Yeah.
So yeah, Luiz. I remember in the semi when we were winning against City, and he was repelling everything. So I think he played a big part in that one cup. But yeah, there was some definitely. Do you remember that red card? I think it was at Wolves. He got himself sent off. Do you remember this? He sort of tripped over himself.
Yeah, it was that weird rule, wasn't it, where you get a red card if you didn't play the ball, but you wouldn't get a red card if you had played the ball. It's very strange.
It's never been seen before or since.
It's another one of those unique Arsenal red cards.
Yeah, like Martinelli also.
Absolutely,
Wolves, 2 yellows. Yeah.
They make it up as they go along. We know that. However, let's go on to happier memories, very recent ones. We're going to discuss Super Sunday. I mean, what the hell happened there? I admit that I stopped watching Spurs against Man City at 1-0 to Man City. I saw the score at halftime on my phone. I didn't look at my phone again for about 4 hours. And I thought there was something wrong with my phone when I looked at it again because Spurs had somehow come back. And it was a double bubble afternoon because of what happened with Villa's defeat at home to Brentford with 10 men. I mean, it just goes to show you cannot predict anything in football. I mean, what was your experience of that day? Steve, I'll start with you.
I was a bit like you with the Tottenham game. I kept an eye on it. I saw it. I saw Semenyo score to make it 2-0. Didn't watch the first 5 minutes, and I think Tottenham scored. But I thought I'm going to watch the cricket because Tottenham won't equalise. They'll let you down because they're Tottenham. And then I was pleasantly surprised to see my phone flash up saying 2-2. But then I thought obviously that they'll throw it away. And with Villa losing as well, it was the kind of set of results. I'm glad we played first because I think we put the pressure on slightly. Because I think if those results happen the other way around, then I'd immediately think we'd squander the opportunity to take advantage at Leeds. But I'm glad that we played first at Leeds, put a bit of pressure on, and I think I've been saying all season City aren't as good as they have been, especially defensively. So I think a little bit of pressure applied on them, and I think we might see them crack. I hope.
I mean, I watched the tail end of the Spurs game, and I wasn't paying any attention at all. It was only when Izzy started screaming upstairs saying, Tottenham have scored, Tottenham have equalised. I thought, no, they haven't. So I switched it on, and sure enough, they had. But I've got to be honest, I mean, City really didn't look like winning it in that. You know, I mean, Guardiola just didn't seem to have any answers.
Wow.
Yeah, they didn't really put them under much pressure. I think there was one header that went wide, but I had a very nice walk from the Prince Charles Cinema up to King's Cross in the rain, and I had it on the radio, and as I got to King's Cross, it went 2-0, so I turned it off. But when I got home, I saw it was 2-1, so I put it on, and within a couple of minutes they equalised. Did Solanke mean that or not?
Not sure.
Well, more to the point, the Spurs fans celebrated like they wanted Spurs to score. Now, was that convenience, or do you actually think they genuinely did not want to lose? Because let's face it, they've done Arsenal a big favour. We all go back to the song Miss. I mean, do you know Spurs fans who've actually reflected on the game since and told you what they really felt, or are we kind of guess here?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of still maintain that if Son had scored in that game, they'd have still lost because they'd have conceded a corner or something and let a goal in. So I've never let myself get too wound up about that one. But I mean, it's only February. I mean, come on, you can't just give up on the season at this point. I mean, you know, if they can turn a corner, they could still make something out of, you know, they're not going to do anything spectacular, but there's still a lot of football left, and you can use a good finish to a season to build you into next season. And you know, whether that's with Frank or not, I don't know. But I mean, yeah, I've never got into that stuff of you know, I just support Arsenal. I don't put any energy into wanting other teams to win or lose. It's just not something that I do. Only if it benefits us. So that's where I would stand on it.
Okay. I mean, there's no chance they're going to go down, is there? I mean,
no,
sadly not.
Well, not unless they had a horrendous run of form. But
well, it's West Ham and Forest that have to get their act together.
They'd have to seriously get their act together for that to happen. So feels
Tottenham would have to be even worse than they have been. I mean, I think the gap's too big. So I'm afraid they're our Arsenal spy in the camp, the manager with his Arsenal cap, will not get them relegated this year.
Yeah, what a classic moment! I mean,
that was brilliant. That was one of the funniest things.
I thought that had to be AI when I first saw it, but it wasn't. It was real.
He couldn't have looked at the cup, could he? He couldn't.
He just couldn't have done. Of course, he couldn't have done. No. It was obviously left over from the previous week, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was apparently handed it as he got off the bus, and whoever gave him it, whether they stitched him up or not, it could just be a Bournemouth
So there
member
was
of
a
staff, and there
cup
was
of coffee in that cup as he was handed it getting off the coach. Really?
yeah, apparently, yeah, because we'd been there on the Saturday, hadn't we? And
We've been there previous, yeah.
We'd obviously left some stuff there, and whoever, it could be a Bournemouth member of staff who just filled a cup up and gave him it. But I mean, in fairness to Frank, you wouldn't think to check a coffee cup in case it had an Arsenal badge on, would you? In any real situation of your life, so I could see how it could happen, but yeah.
You couldn't make it up, let's put it that way. Now, I've been looking at the fixtures, and it's very interesting that because we're in the Carabao Cup final, there isn't going to be a Premier League match for effectively 3 weekends from 15th March to Saturday, 11th of April. And I'm thinking ahead here. We'll have played 31 Premier League matches before that break. And after that break, we have our next European game is the second leg of the quarter-final of the Champions League, assuming we get through the round of 16. So my thought is this: we aren't going to win the title by the time that kind of break from Premier League matches comes around. I mean, there's an international break as well, which is part of the reason. Carabao Cup one weekend, and also I think an FA Cup round. However, we could, if we continue getting good results, be in a position where we don't have to worry too much about getting over the line. Do you think the actual season might fall wonderfully for us in terms of us being able to, shall I say, prioritize in the competitions that matter? Or am I getting carried away and I'm going to look very foolish at the end of the match?
I think you are getting carried away a little bit. But hey, you're a football fan. That's what we do, When things are going well, we start looking ahead, and we can't help ourselves. Sometimes the stars align for you, don't they? And one of the happy coincidences of us coming top of the Champions League is not only the fact that we get our away legs second for the remainder of the competition, but after every away leg, sorry, we get our home legs second. After every away leg, we've got a home league match. So it just, sometimes the stars align for you, and it just feels as if things are happening that we're not used to happening, because we're not used to things kind of falling for us. And, we've had weekends where we've slipped up, and then, the others have slipped up when you wouldn't expect them to. We've had weekends where they've slipped up, and then we've taken advantage. There hasn't really been... I think it does feel as if something's happening this season. Now, I'm not for one moment saying we're going to win the quadruple. People are talking about that. Teams don't win the quadruple. I mean, it's bloody hard to do, and there's a reason no one's done it. I think we should very much be hoping to win at least 2 trophies. I really do. But for me, you're talking about the competitions that matter. The one that matters for me is still the league, and that's the one I want to win. And if I had to choose between the Champions League and the league, I would choose the league. Now, give me 3 years when we've won the league 3 years on the trot. I might put the Champions League first, just so that we get that bloody monkey off our back and stop the Chelsea fans singing. But no, there's something happening this season. I felt it for a long time. Where it'll end, God only knows. We'll find out soon enough. But if we've won all our games between now and that mini break, we're going to be in a very nice position.
Yes, indeed. Simon?
Feels like if we can win on Saturday, on the Sunday, City have to go to Anfield.
Yeah.
And they have to win just to stay 6 points behind. And I'm sure most of you know Guardiola's record there is appalling. Liverpool have they've been drawing some bad results, but they haven't been losing. I think they're about 12 unbeaten. They absolutely smashed Newcastle last week. I don't know if any of you saw that. So I'm looking at that thinking this is a real key weekend this Saturday, I think. If we can get that win on Saturday, it puts a hell of a lot of pressure onto them to have to go there. I realise there's still quite a lot of games, but I mean, yeah, I feel like we've certainly, we've got to be looking to win the league from this position. That's got to be the first aim. We're in the League Cup final. Let's see, in Europe, we've won all our games comfortably as well. Kairat was the only one we haven't won by 2 goals or more. So you look at the field of opponents. Real Madrid don't look that great this season. PSG don't look as good as last year, to my eyes, at the moment. Inter Milan we beat comfortably. So I'm looking at that thinking that could fall quite. We could be a real contender in that too, but it's knockout football. You never know how it falls, do you? Really?
You didn't mention our 2 favourite Champions League teams, Barcelona and Bayern. Was that deliberate?
Well, I mean, I think one of the big problems Bayern Munich has is their league is not that competitive. So when they have to really step it up to play us, they do struggle a bit because they tend to coast to the quarters, semis, and then, like I say, the intensity of our games, it can be a negative because it tires out the team, but it can also be a positive because you're used to these really high level. I always remember the Invincible era team saying that training was more difficult than the matches because the players you were facing in every day were better than who you had to play on the weekend. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, Barcelona, I don't know. I mean, they look a little bit suspect defensively, perhaps, but who knows? You forget last season PSG didn't look that great, did they? In the knockout phase, in the group phase, yeah. But by the knockouts, they looked fantastic. So yeah, things can change quickly.
What's interesting about PSG is what would have happened if we'd played them at home second, as we will this year if we play them, because the atmosphere would have been completely different. For we
wouldn't have had that terrible flag.
But the atmosphere would have been different, wouldn't it? For the second leg, it would have been much bigger for a second leg. It was very flat that day.
I thought the crowd were more nervous than the team.
Well, I think that's the case now, to be honest. I think the crowd are much more nervous about the team's ability to get over the line than the team are.
There was quite a few people at Chelsea. I was in the lower tier Chelsea, so I've got a pair lower and a pair upper, and we move around. And we had on our row for the Chelsea game, almost the entire row had left before Kai scored the goal. They were not regular. There was a lot of non-regulars. I'd say it was 50-50 regulars at best that were there. There was a lot of other people there. And the Kairat game, I was sat upstairs, and I was really, really embarrassed because there was so many empty seats. The lower tier was full. The upper tier, there was so many empty seats. And I'm looking at these people thinking, look, if you can't be bothered to turn up to watch Arsenal, they'll all be there if we play Madrid or PSG. And I'm just looking at them thinking, look, if you can't be asked to turn up to that, you shouldn't have a season ticket. You should give it to someone who wants to go, because the whole point of it is you get a seat for every game. You don't just pick and choose. And if we're playing a unattractive team, you don't bother turning up. So yeah, that's one of my bugbears, Kevin.
Yeah, well, I mean, the club should certainly instigate a scheme whereby people can donate their tickets, because what I suspect happened was everyone put it on Ticket Exchange, just so
and they didn't sell. Yeah,
I'll tell you what.
Give it to local schools. Give it to local schools, and they can take some kids.
I'll tell you what else I'd do if I was the club. I'd make people tap out when they leave the stadium.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'd make them tap out when it comes 100%. To cup finals. When it comes to cup finals, people who are regularly tapping out before the end of a game, they go down the priority list.
There's a bloke in front of me who leaves on 80 every single game, no matter the circumstance. But do you remember the Reece Nelson goal against Bournemouth?
Yeah.
There was a bloke on our row who was not a regular, and he left before Reece's goal. And I think of him sometimes and think, I remember seeing him walk out, and I just thought, fuck off. Like, if you can't be bothered to support that, that's when the team need you. when the team need that goal in the last minute, that's when the team need the crowd. They don't need you when they're 3-0 up. That's when they need you. So yeah, that kind of stuff. Anyone who walked out of Reiss Nelson's goal before he scored should have their ticket deleted and given to someone else, in my opinion.
Well, I have to say I was spitting feathers at the end of the United match when half the stadium had gone and half of those who remained booed. I mean, I was livid, absolutely livid with that.
Martinelli's equaliser against City, there was so many fans that walked out before the whistle. And all it takes is, the ball drops to Eze, he just knocks it over the top, Martinelli's through, puts it in, and you've suddenly got a result. So yeah, people who don't really, not really supporters, those kind of fans, in my opinion, not really a supporter of Arsenal, more just someone who just wants to go and watch a football game. But yeah, it's a whole different topic.
The other thing about that Chelsea game before Havertz scored is there might have been half an hour of football still to come.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why would you leave not knowing whether or not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, okay, there might be a few people who do have to get a late train. I'll give them that. It does happen, but not in the numbers that we see. It's just rush, isn't it? Steve, any comments on early leavers or any reflections on that kind of phenomena?
No, I've never seen the point of leaving early. Like you say, different circumstances. That the Reiss Nelson goal, the Martinelli goal. I was at the Palace quarter-final. People left when Arsenal 1-0 up because Palace got quite a late equaliser that day, didn't they? So, and that went to penalties. And I was thinking that the seats around me were quite empty. It's a bit ridiculous, really. I think some people, like you say, just enjoy saying, "Oh, I've been to the football," rather than getting behind the club, and they kind of see the sort of delays outside the stadium and taking ages to get onto a train as a major inconvenience. And yeah, I've never really understood it. I wonder that there'd be quite an interesting book I think you could write, that you could ask people, did Man United fans leave when they won the Champions League in '99, or did anyone leave Anfield early when
George Best left early?
George Best left early. Yeah.
George Best left early.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could write a really great book of
Yeah.
people who fucked off before really famous goals were scored.
There must have been people who left before Aguero scored as well, and
there would have been for sure.
Yeah. Do you remember
my mate's a City fan, and he reckoned people left. But I don't know if you remember when the previous incarnation of City nearly lost to Gillingham at Wembley. They were 2-0 down, and they scored twice in the 90th minute. And he told me that they left and were walking out, and it went 2-1, and thousands of City fans came back in and all got back in. As I think Paul Dickoff equalised, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think they all got back to their seats in order for and then extra time penalties. So
was it Liam Gallagher left early that day as well? It's just amazing.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that horrible Tottenham game that ended 4-4 at the Emirates?
Yeah, and their away end was empty.
The only consolation I took from that night, was that there were only about 50 Spurs fans in the ground.
Yeah. I still use that as my guide whenever we're beating a team. Like Chelsea the other night, as soon as Kai scored, that away end emptied. And I said to
how
my
quick
mate,
was that?
I turned to my mate and said they're doing their best impression of a Tottenham away end where they've all just fucked off because they've lost.
I honestly could not believe when I finished celebrating the goal, I turned around and the top tier was empty. I could not believe how quickly it had emptied.
The 4-1 against Tottenham a couple of months ago, I mean, Spurs are the only club that could score an absolute worldie, and they didn't even bother celebrating because they were already 3-0 down.
Some good memories there. Yes, I'm going to wrap it up there as we've gone well over the hour. And just to confirm, we are before our next podcast recording at home to Sunderland, away to Brentford, at home to Wigan in the FA Cup, and then the rescheduled Wolves game in midweek, which will then doubtless be mentioned in our next podcast. But for this one, I'm going to express my gratitude to Steve Pye, Simon Cardwell, and Charlie Ashmore for being on the panel. And I will see you all in 2 weeks' time for the 12th edition of this Old Git Gooners podcast. Thank you for watching and or listening. And yeah, see you soon.